Is this a big deal? I don't know, you could be the judge of that, but today we are talking about a Vancouver Canucks prospect that is not going to be a Vancouver Canucks prospect. We're taking our sights over to the 2020 NHL Draft and talking about one of the picks that the Canucks made in the 5th round. Rick Dhaliwal was reporting this morning that Vancouver Canucks 5th round 2020 pick Jacob Truscott will not be signing with the Canucks. Wonder if he has any trade value? Scott Wheeler of The Athletic ranked him as Vancouver's 7th best prospect. Now, before we go over and look at some of the other comments about Truscott, let's go over the profile here, just talk about who he is as a player, what the Canucks are losing out on. Truscott is a 21-year-old 6'1", 185 left-handed defenseman, as we had said, drafted by Vancouver in the 144th overall spot in 2020. This is a guy who, playing for the University of Michigan, is in his senior year as the captain of the program. He's got 13 points in 28 games played, not really the biggest, flashiest point producer, but as a leader, as a defenseman, he has had some value. When he made his debut with Michigan back in 2020-2021, he played under the likes of some very notable names. Borderlow, Johnson, Matty Beniers. He was underneath Cam York and Owen Power, not to mention Nick Blankenberg, who was here too. And then as the years went on, Truscott took more of a leadership role in that locker room, which is why now today he is the captain of the Wolverines. Now, if you go over to the scouting report, this is what they wrote about Truscott back in 2020. He uses great edge work and mobility to find great passing options and exits from his own zone of the ice. One can take solace in the fact that Truscott is a technically skilled passer who can thread the needle in all 3 zones. Even if he doesn't leverage that often enough to be an impact player, proof of concept exists. And that is a good way to describe Truscott because he's never really been a flashy point producer, but more so just a regular transition guy who plays well in his own end. If you wanted to get an even bigger report as to what Truscott could be, this is the video back when he was drafted by Vancouver in 2020. According to the panel, Truscott could be an Alex Edler type defenseman, and his favorite player? Quinn Hughes. Scouts spoke and said that he's really good at joining the rush, he does well at finding seams and open teammates. This has been a very solid two-way defenseman, and when it comes to his projectability, if you want to talk about 5th round guys actually panning out to NHL talents, these are the kinds of guys that you see value out of. The Ben Huttons of the world, the Alex Edlers of the world, guys who don't produce a ton of points, but who have so much intangible value outside of the offensive zone that you can't help but ignore what it is they're capable of doing. Now, the 13 points in 28 games played isn't amazing, but still. Truscott is a guy who, at this point in his NHL development path, you could say he may have himself a shot at making an NHL roster one day in more so of a depth defenseman, maybe bottom 4 kind of role. But when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks, this may just be a case of musical chairs, according to Dave Hall. Christian Wolanin and Akito Hirose are signed next year. Meanwhile, Elias Pettersson and Kirill Kudryavtsev are available to make the jump. And for what it's worth, Hall, who writes stuff here for Canucks Army, was going to drop his top 10 prospects list, and he did have Truscott making the cut. He's a steady, sturdy, defensive, penalty-killing stalwart who apparently is a tremendous teammate. He's the captain of Michigan for a reason. He'll be a good UFA signing somewhere else. And so when it comes to Truscott, this certainly is one of the more painful departures from the Vancouver Canucks organization, but it's one where you sort of see the necessity from his own POV. Obviously, this is the con when it comes to drafting NCAA talent, because as a guy who was drafted by Vancouver in 2020, he had 4 years worth of development in the NCAA before deciding that the Canucks system was not for him, and eventually putting himself in the free agent market. The Canucks losing out on a profile like this definitely hurts, and it hurts even more when you think about how he was one of the only guys that actually provided value for this team from that 2020 draft. Joni Jurmo is gone. Meanwhile, Victor Persson is in the SM Liga. He pretty much isn't a Canuck anymore, and for Jacob Truscott to see him losing out, these are all 3 of the Canucks 2020 drafted defensemen not being a part of the organization anymore. Now, we could talk about Dmitri Zlodiev and Jackson Kuntz, but I mean, look, Kuntz is doing some good things with the North Dakota University. He's not really scoring too much, but he's there. And then when it comes to Dmitri Zlodiev, he played 6 games with the Abbotsford Canucks this season. So, that 2020 draft class for Vancouver, despite the lack of picks, they really haven't done much to go out there and provide significant value, considering Yermo and Truscott are now gone from the organization within the span of a few weeks. But of course, I mean, this point makes a lot of sense too. Willander and Hirose are both guys that can step into the NHL and play significant minutes. Elias Pettersson and Kudryavtsev are prospects that are doing well too. So you could very well say there just wasn't enough room for Truscott to be a part of Vancouver and stabilize himself with this core. Heading into the Abbotsford system, you could say there might have been a little bit of a difficulty there as well, especially when you talk about some of the defensemen the Canucks have marinating with that team. I mean, even if you discount like the Noah Juulsens and the Friedmans and the Brisebois, you've got Matt Irwin, he's still down there. You've got Akito Hirose, Cole McWard, Philip Johansson, a few other guys that have been rotating around in Abbotsford, and you still have Tucker Poolman, who is probably never going to come back, but who is still a player on this roster for whatever reason. So for Jacob Truscott, this is an unfortunate Canucks loss. If you're a fan of the Michigan Wolverines, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this player not coming over to Vancouver. What are your thoughts on what he could be? What are your thoughts on whomever is going to sign him? I think there's a really good opportunity that Truscott ends up becoming sort of that Nick Blankenburg type mold. We had talked about how he was a teammate of Nick Blankenburg's back in the day, and Blankenburg today is one of these better prospects, or not even really prospects, but just defensemen in the Columbus Blue Jackets system. Blankenburg right now is in the Cleveland Monsters system in the AHL, but he did have significant time with the Blue Jackets last year, and I did like his game a lot. He played some pretty good minutes and showed a level of dynamism in his game that wasn't really too apparent if you just look at the raw hard point production by itself. Of course, this was a free agent signing, random guy that wasn't drafted anywhere, so there is a little bit of a difference comparative to Jacob Truscott, but Blankenburg sort of exhibits this kind of role that I think Truscott could have in the NHL too, assuming he's actually willing to sign with a team and spend some time on a two-way deal going up and down between the NHL and the AHL systems. So, Canucks fans, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Jacob Truscott, Canucks losing out on a defenseman prospect for the Michigan Wolverines. This is unfortunate if you want to talk about that Wolverines connection with Quinn Hughes, Tyler Mott, some of the other guys that have been rotating around from that system too. But when it comes to the next Alex Edler, the Canucks are saying goodbye. Do you think, question mark for the end of this video here, that the departures of all these guys is kind of alarming to see it come all at once? Hunter Brustevich, of course, was traded away in the Elias Lindholm-Andrei Kuzmenko trade. You've got Yoni Yermo, who's also gone, but he really wasn't going to amount to anything, in my opinion. Truscott actually had potential, which is why this entire thing hurts a little bit more, but there are still a few other defensemen that I think are noteworthy to pay attention to throughout the years as well. But for now, the Canucks lost out on another one. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.